Dreaming of living the RV life and wondering how to make money on the road? Are you thinking about content creation? My expert guest is here to help. You don't want to miss this episode. My name is Patty Hunt, and you're listening to the RV Life Podcast. Never have I ever thought of being a content creator, but here I am. I was a teacher for 20 years, and I realized I wasn't living my life fully. So I decided to try my hands at entrepreneurship and different roads I decided to go down. But it was because of my mentors and experts that helped me to see what was possible. And here I am today. And I am so grateful for today's guest who agreed to take time out of his busy day to be on the podcast with me to help with valuable information. The RV Life Podcast was created to educate, entertain, and explore the RV lifestyle with the mission to inspire you to live life to the fullest. Today's episode was inspired by an RV Life Podcast fan who reached out to me. She is a young mom with 3 little boys. Her and her husband are looking to go RVing. And she was really inspired by what I talked about on the podcast. She and I had the opportunity to get on a phone call and talk about, all the questions that people have when they're first starting out the RV life, including her wanting to be a content creator. So today's episode is for you, Brittany. This week, What You Need to Know is brought to you by Open Road Resorts. They have amazing locations in Montana, Idaho, Nebraska, New Mexico, and now there are 2 locations in Texas. So those of you who are looking to get out of the cold and into the warmer weather in the Texas area, these locations are amazing. Dallas Northeast is one of the locations, obviously northeast of Dallas, and I had the opportunity to stay there for a number of days, and I loved it. For me, it was a place to just relax and unwind, but there is plenty to do in the campground, as well as pull up to this huge pond and watch the sunset each night. One of my favorite things. Their newest location is called Good Shepherd RV Park, and it is north of Dallas, with many amenities and activities in this campground, as well as it being such a great location to all that the Dallas-Fort Worth area has to offer. Open Roads Resort, you can check them out at openroadsresort.com. Okay, so what you need to know. Today, we're talking about making money on the road and how to do that. And so I did a deep dive into research on how many RVers are working from the road. And the number was a little bit all over the place. There's somewhere between 40 and 60% of people doing some type of work while on the road. And whether people are full-time or part-time or sometime RVers, they are trying to find ways to make money on the road. Now, my friends, Kyle and Renee of Happily Ever Hanks, have a YouTube channel, and they did a great episode on the top 5 money-making jobs every RV owner needs to know. And you could check them out, and they gave suggestions of seasonal jobs like Christmas tree farms, being a camp host, insurance claim adjuster, and so much more. They have a wealth of information. Renee and Kyle were also guests on the RV Life Podcast in an episode called Balancing RV Life with a Successful YouTube Channel. And their tips were so helpful for anybody looking to balance being out there, enjoying your life, and working, being a content creator. So I highly recommend that episode. But let's get to today's guest. Misha is a seasoned sales expert who once retired to teach yoga and be a stay-at-home dad. Now, as Chief Influence Officer of the Influence Army and host of the top 1.5% podcast, the Table Rush Talk Show, He helps heart centered entrepreneurs amplify their message and build influence without costly advertising. Misha, welcome to the RV Life podcast.
Patty, thank you so much. So excited to be here. Yeah, can't wait
I
to
am
dive
too.
deep.
Yes, and the excitement is just over the top. Please do me a favor and pronounce your last name.
Zwagenstoff.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
It has a lot of letters. I didn't want to mess it up. Thank you. Okay.
indeed. That's a tricky one for everybody. People practice and practice. They'll get it just right. And then when it comes to saying it live, they self-destruct almost
That
every time.
that's what I figured. So I'll just let you handle that part. Now,
Sure.
as I always do a pre-interview, you shared some of your personal story, which led you to where you are today. Can you share that story with my podcast listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was fairly successful in sales. I had a 25-year sales career and I completely burned out and bottomed out and, and ended up needing to retire. And I usually tell this part of the story at the very end, but I'll just say it now. I had come to the point where I'll never forget it. I went into my boss to quit my job and in effect retire. And it was in, I don't know if anybody who's had a corporate job, it was in one of those towers and the stale lights and the cubicles and the desk, just the whole look and the faux Herman Mailer chairs, right? And
Uh-huh.
just and even the smell of the office buildings, I just the whole thing. And I went in to quit and I said, I wish I could remember his name, but I was at this point, I finally had hit bottom and was like, I need to quit. And I went in to quit and can't remember his name. And I said, hey boss, I quit. And he looked at me and goes, hey Misha, we'll match any offer that you're getting out there. We really want you to stay. This I was in home loans at the time. And I said, "You don't understand. I'm quitting. I'm done. I'm a single dad. I'm retiring to get my boys through high school." And he stone cold looked at me with the saddest eyes you have ever seen. And he said, "Misha, I wish I could quit too." And I was like,
Wow.
"Yeah, I knew I had done the right thing, quitting, to get my boys through high school, through grade school, and then high school as a single divorced dad." But basically, um, what had happened was I had been working really hard in sales, telemarketing. I started as in telemarketing and financial services, retail commodities broker, and I was literally this was back in the late '90s, the 1990s. I was hand dialing 150 to 200 dials a day, reading off a script, and really learning my chops. And really, in sales, you get to learn how to deal with rejection. And most of the selling I was doing was short sales cycle selling. So you're dealing with lots of people, meaning they're either saying yes on the spot or within the next couple weeks or 30 days, versus somebody who's doing long sales cycle selling where they're nurturing the relationship for years. It's a government contract, but fast forward, I ended up in mortgages. Everything came together for me as a home loan officer, and I was doing very, very well. Successful wife, beautiful wife, my two sons and house, all the things, and I came home one day and Dawn is my ex-wife. Dawn was not at home and the boys were gone. And I was like, Dawn, where are you? And she says, well, we're not coming back. And that was obviously a very heavy day. And God bless Dawn for pulling the ripcord at that point. I mean, in hindsight, I see that. In the moment, it was very, very, very painful. But Dawn and I have a great relationship now. And so I say this with no hard feelings towards Dawn, right? But in that moment, it was, you know, smack in the head by the universe. And then both my parents died very soon thereafter in rapid succession within 2 weeks of each other. Then more failed career upheaval. So as all this stuff is happening, I've got some money in the bank, so I'm financially okay. I have the awareness that money's not the answer. That's kind of what happens. I'm like, oh my gosh, money's not the answer. And that's a hard place to be, right? I mean, it's a
Yes,
beautiful place to be
yes,
when yes, yes,
yes.
yes. And so uh, overnight, everything that I was good at in home loans became painful. And I don't know if you've had that experience or anybody watching, listening, where it's like, oh, my gifts all of a sudden hurt, right? That's what it
Right.
felt like
Mhm.
psychically painful. And and then I went through another breakup, and that really like ripped the cap off the emotional bottle. I would say that I've been in recovery for the bulk of my life. I got clean and sober when I was 17 years old, and I've been clean and sober ever since. And I just say that in that being clean and sober and being involved in the 12-step modalities and you know, the saying is trust in God, clean house, work with others. And the trust in God is, reduction of your ego, reduction of your ego. Your you got to find direction other than the monkey mind, right? And so hopefully that's a God, higher power, call it what you will. Clean house. That means start taking accountability, shed the victim mindset. Like, all right, what's my part in the problem? Like, what if I looked at everything as that I was the problem, and so therefore I can fix it moving forward and not have to worry about you, right? Um, and then help others, which is that service mindset, that further reduction of the ego. If I can plow through life, stumble through life, and really change from what am I taking versus what am I adding into the stream of life, then what a much better way to progress forward. And so that was transformational for me, obviously. But I just say that because it set up the foundation for me to. So I get clean and sober. I'm, 17 years old, but I'm still as a good red-blooded American male, suppressing more emotions that I'm letting out, right? So figure I roll into my 30s and I finally figure out, oh, I need to like healthily deal with my emotions. So I'm on balance, letting out as many emotions as I'm taking in. I at that point in my life, though, I still have lots of suppressed life emotions and thank you for listening to all this. And so what happens is that next failed relationship rips pulls the plug off of all those emotions. And I was like, oh no, like these are emotions are coming out and I need to learn how to deal with them healthily and money's not the answer. Women aren't the answer. It's like my hand was forced. And fast forward, I had, yeah, I had
Yeah.
this awareness, of like, what am I going to, like, I'm suffering at work. God, I literally was praying to God as I'm meditating and crying and journaling and letting all these emotions out. Like, what's the next thing for me to do? And I had that epiphany moment. I did this weekend with retreat with Kyle Cease is the gentleman's name. And really, you end up inventorying what's important in your life. And I was like, oh my gosh, at this time in my life, I love that early morning cup of coffee, that cup of tea. I love getting my boys to school. I love making their lunches. I love reading in their class. I was like, oh my gosh, my destiny right now is to be a stay-at-home dad. And beautiful place to be, but also at that time, my ego it was so hard. My identity and my ego. And so that was the day I realized it after that weekend, went in to quit the next day. And that's when my boss looked at me and was like, man, I wish I could quit too. But there's a long answer to your question. There
Yes.
you go.
And so much. And I want to let my listeners know, people who have listened to the show before know this, but for anybody new, this isn't scripted. You and I don't have a set of questions. That was so much incredible information that I knew would come out during the podcast. There it is, all in the beginning. So much for people to try and take in. And I like breaking things down as a teacher. There are some people, everything you said that was great, that moved them, that encouraged them, that inspired them. And some of my listeners, I'm sure, need some of that broken down. So I try and do a little of both. I think that, and this is what I wanted to bring out on the podcast, the fact that, so let me go back and tell a little bit about my story. I was a teacher for 20 years. I was not able to help my students in the way that I wanted to be able to help and support them. It's rough to work within the system. And so I knew I wasn't living my life to the fullest the way I wanted to. Something happened in my life, and, my husband Dan had gotten ill, and it was like, you take inventory of your life. What am I doing? I'm living day to day, working for the weekends, can't wait till my, days off. That's not the way to live. So it was a wake-up call for living life fully. But then what do I do? What does that look like? And so, I became a content creator, and we're going to use that word a lot. And there's a lot that fits within that, right? So I was a speaker. I did social media. I was, did videos, blah, 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 the whole thing. What I realized, and what I hope people get out of this, because I've had a lot of people say to me, I want to get on the road. How do I make money doing that? How do I support myself? My friend Brittany, who I talked to yesterday, she wants her husband to be able to retire, to be there so they can enjoy their family with their 3 young boys. But then you do, at the end of the day, need to make money. So how's it all going to work? And I think the first biggest thing is getting past those blocks, and we're going to talk about those today. For me, I would go to these events and these speakers would be on stage. There was this couple I knew, they were on stage. They looked perfect. They sounded perfect. They had it all together, so there I sat thinking, I will never be that. How could I ever be that? And so as I got to know them, I said to the guy, his name's John, I said, John, I'm not that. I can never be that. And he looked me square in the eyes and he said, the only difference between me and you is whether or not you just continue to work on your craft and do it. He said, I dropped out of high school. I had to learn every step of the way. I had a struggle. I sat in the seat that you sat in, looking at the person on stage, wondering how I'd ever become that. And that was a life-changing moment for me. And the thing that I want to get across to people is looking at any content creator, any superstar, anybody who looks successful. It didn't happen overnight. They have their fears, they have their scared moments, they have their days. Listen, there are still days of me laying in bed crying. I'm going to be totally honest here. Life hits you sometimes. And with our best of, moments in our learning and our teaching, there are days that are just not good days. And we've got to embrace those. So, for anybody listening that wants to become a content creator in some way, just know that everybody you look at and you think, wow, they started in the same place you're in, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's going to be heartening for some people and disheartening for others, uh, because dues have to be paid. Dues have to be paid. And I think what's so interesting, if we look at top movie stars, and definitely top movie stars in the MCU or the Marvel creator universe, whatever that is, right? That's like Iron Man and all these actors.
He's my favorite.
Yes. So if you look at a lot of those actors, they were child stars. They were in the Disney child development loop. Like those actors as young kids were on the Disney stages at Disney World, at Disneyland. They were on the Disney Channel in the shows. And the next thing you know, they have seemingly overnight success as a superhero. Or I think of that guy a lot. Gosh, I can't believe I can't remember his name right now, but he was in that movie, The Hurt Locker, where that great war movie. Do you remember that movie, The Hurt
No.
Locker? It's about a bomb. He disarms bombs in Iraq or something like that. At the time, the director of it was a female, It was James Cameron's ex-wife. And so the movie that came out at the time was Avatar, I believe, and then this movie, The Hurt Locker. James Cameron and the wife, can't remember her name, they're divorced at the time of this thing. And it was really interesting because they're both vying for movie of the year for the Academy Award. And I believe that his ex-wife, the director of The Hurt Locker, got the Academy Award for this movie. So at the time, big movie. But seemingly the actor who just did such an amazing job, and now he's in the MCU. He's the Arrow guy. Can't remember his name. Sorry. Watching,
Okay.
listening.
Yeah, I'm going to ask my listeners to fill in the blanks on
Yeah,
people's
yes,
names for us.
yes.
Yes, please
I'll
help
try
us
to
out.
get. Yeah,
We'll,
I'll try
we,
to get to.
we'll
Yeah,
Google it. Yeah.
yeah. We'll Google it. I could probably be Googling it as I'm talking about it. Point is, I saw as his rise to stardom was that movie wasn't the beginning point. That's my point. It was
Right.
like, oh, he had done a lot of pre-work. But it's right. There's work
Yeah.
to be done. There's dues to be paid. So we get to refine our craft. We get to learn how to tell stories wrongly, perhaps.
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, but no, it's fine. This is what, and I'm hoping people are getting, my listeners are getting from this, what we're trying to put out there, that, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not, I've seen too many people, talk to too many people that look at other content creators and they say, well, if I have that one video that goes viral. Okay. No, that doesn't work that way. It rarely works that way. This all isn't about luck. It's not about necessarily being in the right place at the right time. I want to talk about what it is about. First of all, what holds people back. They're comparing themselves to others, as we just talked about. That's the biggest thing. Comparing ourselves to somebody else and saying, look at how successful they are. Well, behind the scenes, they've been working their butts off. They've been struggling. They've had their ups and downs. They've had to get past their negative belief system. And they continued on. And that's one of the big things that hold people back, as well as skills that, I'm depending on you to talk about skills to keep people going when they have their doubts.
But two things I want to say really quick too is that the bulk of the musicians making that are successful in the world, we've never heard of. They're doing they're making music at weddings. They're having fun. They love it. They're doing localized things, small fairs, things like that. Maybe they're on the cruise ships. There's so many people that are having great, great success as musicians that we've never heard of that aren't superstars. And I think that that's an important thing to remember. We don't need to be the number one content creator. Nobody needs to hear of us, and we can have success as a content creator as long as we are dabbling within our niche. So I think that's important lesson number one. You don't need to be the biggest thing. The other thing is, what is our goal? Find your why. When I started, right, when I reemerged, yeah. So find your why. Number one is find your why, and that why can change. So when my boys started graduating from high school, had their jobs, had their girlfriends. They're like, Dad, all right, you don't need to pay attention to us as much anymore. Go find something else to do. Right. And I always knew that I would have new entrepreneurial ideas, new adventures were coming my way. I just needed to be patient, get those boys through school. So sure enough, as the boys get through school, I reemerge and it's time to become a content creator, to start making money in the online environment, shall we say. And so I jump into Russell Brunson's, what's called his 2CCX, one of his higher end coaching groups. I paid $25,000 a year right out of the gate, kind of probably naively, but I loved it. I learned so much. But one of the things that he talked about is find your why, find your why, find your why. And it's funny, before I came on here, I was like, let's list some whys. And I have a bunch of them. I was like, maybe you want to be funny. Maybe you want to be creative. Maybe you want to be political. Maybe you want to tell stories. Maybe you want to put yourself out there more. Maybe you want to embrace your fears. Maybe you're trying to learn how to express yourself. Maybe you want to share your knowledge. Maybe you just want to have fun. Nothing wrong with having fun. Maybe you want to make money, but find your why, maybe journal on your why. And I said a whole bunch of things. None of those need to resonate with you, but maybe something does. Maybe you're a bit older, like you and I are. We're not super old, but we're a little older.
Wait,
We're
whoa.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Jacob edit that out. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, I'm assuming anybody living
Yeah.
the RV life is probably 50-ish or
That's
more.
interesting you say that because there's a lot of younger people, and that's where this episode is great because I spoke to Brittany and she's got three young boys. She's way younger
Yeah.
than us. I'll say way younger. So interesting that that is the belief that older.
Yeah.
I don't have a
So,
better word for
sorry, all
it.
you younger
Yeah.
listeners and
Yeah.
anybody older. But
And it's good that, to define that. And that's a good
yes.
thing when you're looking at content creation, define your avatar, your person that you're talking to. But go ahead, a little off track there.
Yeah, yeah, no. And yeah, next thing is too, as we grow and mature, and if we're trying to monetize the way I am monetizing my influence, being an influencer, is I teach people how to guest speak on podcasts. I teach people how to go on what I like to call an influence tour. What I say is I help heart-centered entrepreneurs increase their authority, their impact, and income by going on what I like to call as an influence tour. That all starts by guest speaking on podcasts. Guest speaking on podcasts to build our thought leadership, to build an audience, to grow our network. Okay. So the way I am monetizing how I'm putting myself out there is I teach courses, I sell courses, I have a monthly membership. That's why I'm saying all this. So that's the way I monetize and make money, or try to make money on some months doing what I do. Other people could become what I think of as a traditional influencer. They build a big Facebook following or Instagram following, and then they're doing brand deals or things like that, or all these kinds of things. There's those sorts of routes. You can have a podcast, sell ads. There's so many ways to do it, to promote yourself, to bring, if your knowledge, to be able to monetize your knowledge and what you know how to know, love, and do. Am I
Right.
saying that right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great information. Again, the big thing for me is doing what I love. What I've realized, as a teacher, I did love working with my students. But it got to the point where I couldn't do it and I didn't love it anymore. And now, as I've moved forward, doing what I love. And I think that when you do what you love, the money follows. And that was a tough one. You said it in the beginning. Let go of the money part of it was a huge one for me. When I first heard that many years ago, I was like, what is this person talking about? You've got to be kidding me. There's bills to pay. But when you let go of that and you're happy with what you're doing, then the money comes. And that may be an episode in itself because that is a tough
Absolutely.
one for people. Now, to your point, ways to make money as a content creator, and I'm going to segue into a little bit of my little bit of a break here. Advertising. So on the RV Life podcast is able to run because of advertisers that, have supported me. And all of my advertisers are truly people that I know, like, trust, care about. So one of my advertisers, Clear 2O, I'm just going to jump right in. They talk about staying hydrated. Clear 2O is a filtration system. You can't always trust the water, especially when you go into campgrounds or you're hiking in the wilderness, you're on a road trip, or there's an unexpected emergency, and having clean, safe drinking water is essential. Streams, lakes, rivers, they may look clean, but they do hide harmful contaminants. The Clear 2O dual personal water filter should be in everybody's prep kit. It is lightweight, compact, and a versatile filtration system that fits right in the palm of your hand. So it is easy. It doesn't matter where you are. Now, its advanced filtration system will get it down to zero point 0.1 micron. The lower the micron, the cleaner the water. So that seems to be about as clean as you could get water. Clear 2.0 dual filters, dual filter system cleans out bacteria, microplastics. It makes your water safe. And you don't want to leave home without this. So you could go to clear20.com. They're even giving a 15% discount to my RV Life podcast listeners. Just type in RV Life podcast, and that'll be in the show notes. So to the point, that is one way when content creators start to develop, they can get advertisers, and there are affiliate programs that they can use as a way to make money, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you can have affiliate relationships. That is a great thing about the influencer market or the online market right now is you can literally not have a product and you can just talk about stuff that you love to use. And actually, there's this whole segment called user generated content where companies are paying users to create content for them that they can share. So I'll give Trader Joe's as an example. I love Trader Joe's. I'm always buying Trader Joe's stuff. I could literally make a little video about here's how I use the Trader Joe's fried rice and make it, oh, and it's so good. Right. And as a single dad or as a retired guy or whatever it is, it solves this problem. And Trader Joe's will pay for that content. And there's this whole segment now as well of okay, we need 50 to 60-year-old user generated content. So I'm in the 50 to 60-year-old bucket. So they're like, all right, Misha, go try these shoes or do all these different things. There's this whole arena out there, which leads me to this. Anybody watching, listening, key is just to get started. Pencil out a why, come up with a why. Why do I want to do this? Well, I want to change the world. Great. Well, actually, I just want to have fun. Or I've always been shy. I want to put myself out there. Or, man, I've got this knowledge that the world needs to know. Great. Pencil it down, put that at the top of your, mirror and stare at that every day. Right. And then just get started. When I did that weekend retreat with Kyle Cease, it became very clear that I needed to start a podcast. And this is about 8 years ago, coming on 9 years ago by now. When I did that, I bought a microphone. I started recording everything. I was having fun, but I didn't start my podcast for another 4 years. And that's one of the regrets I have in my life. I was like, why did I wait 4 years to actually start the darn thing? And we can morph and change. That's the other thing. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes to go down here or lines of thinking, but if we can let go of perfection, take the messy action, a saying that I tell myself all the time because I can be a perfectionist is the best is the enemy of more than good enough. So I'm constantly telling myself the best is the enemy of more than good enough. And I'll say this for any fledgling content creators listening and watching is you have no audience to offend when you get started anyway. So just get started, right?
And I love all of this that you're saying. I mean, my whole thing was perfection. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't perfect. When I started speaking on stage, when I started in front of a camera, like I want people to truly understand. I wanted to know parts of this. People said, well, you were a teacher, so a natural speaker. No, I talked to students. I talked to kids. And when it came to back to school night, when the parents come in, well, these are adults. That didn't work for me. So I would get my teachers on my team to do back to school night together so I could hide behind. There's always a person that wants to stand out and talk. It wasn't me. So I would hide behind them. Like that's where I started. And I want to demystify, I guess is the word, that idea that, well, you're a natural speaker. You've always had this talent. No. But to your point, my why, now I learned about my why many years ago. Love the book by Simon Sinek, Find Your Why. So anybody who is looking at what is this why they're talking about, wants some interesting reading, that is a great book, because knowing why you're doing what you're doing is what gets you out of bed, is what keeps you going. It's what keeps me going when I listen to the podcast, my own episode, and I think my voice didn't sound great that day. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it's like you said, not perfect, but my goal has been to inspire others to fully live their life. And that has helped me as well. And it helps you through your ups and downs. So, that's what keeps me going. And I hope that people listening, those RVers that reach out to me, who are thinking about getting into this lifestyle and worried about the what ifs. How do I make money? How do I live on the, how do I dump the black tank? Yeah, there are things to learn, and those things will come in time. And having that strong why, speaking to Brittany, she wants to have this life with her husband and her children. She wants to be part of their life. She didn't specifically talk about a why, but that sounds like, what her goal is. She is actually a documentary photographer. I think I'm saying that right. And wanted to know, is this a good thing to do as a content creator living on the road? And I'm going to tell her, yes, yes, it is. Right. I
Oh
wish
my
people
God.
could see your
That,
face. Go ahead.
yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. I would encourage her to get started right away. I was jotting down some things as well for RV lifers. Me looking at it completely from the outside and not being an RV enthusiast, there are so many stories to be told by RVers, so many stories. I literally was thinking this morning, I was thinking of all the people that you meet, all the interesting conversations that you have. I was thinking, where you park and spend the night, who are you meeting? The stores you're going to, the restaurants and all these different places, the grocery stores, the gas stations, the I have a framework that I teach. It's called my Story Bank Get Your Stories Together worksheet. So you can tell the what is it? Hold on. So you expertly know what to say and when to say it and inspire the audience to action. But what we're doing is we're inventorying the story arcs of our life. And within the story arcs of our life, we've got our own stories. And I talked some of my own stories. We've got the impactful people's stories. So I talked to Kyle Cease, right? Kyle Cease was very impactful to me. You just mentioned Simon Sinek. And then there's the people that I've inspired or my customers, or what I call my customer stories, but maybe you don't have any customers, but you probably have aunts, uncles, parents, sisters, coworkers, people that you've met and inspired. And if we just start documenting those stories a little bit, so literally take a piece of paper or open your note app on your phone and just write a word or a phrase for each of that story, each of that moment, so then you can speak to it. It's a very powerful way to go. And I just think, man, people that are in their RVs have so much content to share that's being organically created. And here's a tip, and I learned this from what's her name, Rachel Peterson. And Rachel Peterson, her claim to fame was she was a single mom, or not a single mom. She was a relatively new mom. But I guess after you have a couple babies, perhaps your bladder control can be a little wonky at best, right? So she was like an athletic influencer, and all of a sudden she Peter Pants, right? And she realized it, and she just kept going and powered through. And that all of a sudden, that vulnerability and all this, that brought her rise to fame, right? And so now she's super successful. She helps moms, have better bodies, all these things, kind of reclaim their life kind of stuff. But anyway, the point is what she says, Rachel Peterson says, is what you do is when you have an impactful moment in your life, as soon as you can, just snap a picture wherever you are. So, like right now, if someone's listening to this podcast episode and we've inspired them and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I need to become a content creator," snap a picture of where you are, right? Just snap a picture, a selfie, just to document that moment. And it's time stamped these days automatically, so you don't have to worry about it. But then open your note app on your phone, and I do this all the time. So I'll have a moment of clarity or a peak moment, or I'll be like, "Oh my God, I just realized," and I will document and note what my feelings were, what my thoughts were, what I was doing in the moment, so that I can speak to that story at a later date if I want to, or so that I can make a post right now. Does that make sense? So it's just
That
kind of,
makes so much sense. I love that telling, hearing other people's stories, telling your own story is so impactful. So, Brittany, who I spoke to, told me her story of how she wants to get her family on the road, live this better life. That story that then I could share with others. I could share my own stories. And I love the idea that I could share other people's stories. That has so much impact. And I love what you're saying about taking that picture. And I think that's important to take the selfie. It doesn't matter what you look like, what you're wearing, where you're at. Take that selfie and then write those notes, because that's something people could look back on when in 6 months or a year, things aren't quite going right. You could look back and say, this is why I did it. This is why
yes.
I started. Because there's going to be ups and downs. Story. And I love that the RV Life podcast gives me the platform to share my story and other people's story. Again, my mission is to inspire people to live life fully. And I just want to bring up November 6th episode of the podcast. I had a mom and dad on, and they told a touching story. There were a lot of tears. So, trigger warning for people. It all worked out well. But this was a young couple with a 5-year-old son. They had 4 children. Their 5-year-old son had to be taken to the emergency room, where they were told, had they not brought him in, he would not have woke up the next day. He was he is type 1 diabetic, and they didn't know. And she said that was it. That was my life-changing moment of, oh my God, had he died, I didn't do anything. He didn't get to go anywhere. He didn't get to see anybody or see the world, see things. And that's what changed her life. My hope is that people hear these other people's stories and don't have to wait. Now, she talked about, not having regrets. And when I first started talking to you, I picked the podcast episode that you did with Gregory
Benedict.
Benedict, and it was about not having regrets. And I think that might be something important to share with with my audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, Gregory Benedict, listen to that episode on my podcast. It's such a great interview. So inspiring. He's young 30s, maybe late 20s, rejected the corporate life fairly quickly. Was like, this, I am not living my dream. I am gonna have regrets. And so he quit the corporate life, and he went out and he's like, I'm going to do the hundred things that I don't want to do or challenge myself to do, and in effect write a book about it. It's something like that. And so his challenge is do hard things. And it's so powerful. If we make that bucket list and take action on that bucket list, is in essence what he's talking about. And so people will ask me, you know, what would you be doing with your life if you could do anything? And I'm like, well, literally, I would be doing what I'm doing right now. I'm passionate about podcasting. I love it. I love telling stories. I love being interviewed. I love it. I have my hard days, trust me, but I'm literally doing what I know that I'm called and love to do. So how powerful is that of a space to work from? Where I'm like, if someone says you have 6 months to live, what are you going to do? Well, I'm just going to maybe try and do what I'm doing now better, or or what am I not doing within what I'm doing that I need to take action on and check off that bucket list. So I love that thought and I love that idea. And everybody should definitely listen to that Greg Benedict episode on the Table Rush Talk Show because
Yeah.
the way he talks about it is so empowering.
It is, and it was such a message to me. A year ago, my mother was in hospice, and I had the great fortune of staying with her for 6 months. Another benefit of living the life I'm living, not the 9 to 5. And again, it's not for everybody. I'm not trying to convince anybody to sell everything, buy an RV, and go full time. It isn't for everybody. Do what works for you, figure out what works for you. But living this life full time, I was able to be with her for 6 months. And I came across the book that Gregory mentioned. It's the five top regrets of the dying. What a powerful book. So again, for my listeners, if it, you know, resonates with you, you could get it on any Audible and all of those types of places. If it feels like it just reinforced so much for me because again, we're always learning as content creators. Your podcast is in the top 1.5% of all podcasts worldwide. Wow. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
Uh,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
and a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of hard work. I'm sure there was doubt behind it. Let's talk about, let's just jump into how to get started. Now, I am going to pause for a second because I do have one of my sponsors I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to jump in to how to get started as a content creator. Okay. We talk a lot about making money on the road. There's also ways to save money while you're on the road. And the best way to save on diesel fuel is with the Open Roads fuel card. You could go to myopenroads.com and you could save anywhere from 40 to 50 cents a gallon. And there have been times that I've saved even more than that when you have a diesel tank that's 125 gallons. Well, even if you have a small diesel tank, every dime you could save is helpful. So it is so easy to sign up. Go to myopenroads.com. The link is in the show notes. Sign up is absolutely free. Once you receive your card in the mail, you download the app to find thousands of gas stations across the country. And these are gas stations like Love's and TA. They are all over the country. I've never had a problem finding a gas station. And then you just go fuel up and save. So go to myopenroads.com, links in the show notes, and save money on your diesel fuel. But now let's talk about, we've got people's attention now. We want people to work through those mental blocks that we all have. They come and go. It's not like we get rid of them forever. But let's talk about starting, let's say, a podcast or, content, any kind of
Yeah.
content creator. Let's give them some tips.
Amazing. I'm going to give you some tips. And I learned this from Russell Brunson. This is so powerful. When I joined Russell Brunson, and I paid $150,000 in coaching and in masterminds and all this stuff to learn all this stuff. So anybody watching, listening, I'm going to save you a lot of hassle.
And money.
Okay. Yeah, and money. So, sort out your why a little bit, play with it. Fine. We talked about that. The next thing is think about content, think about long form content, and think about starting your channel. And the three core channels these days are starting a YouTube channel, starting a podcast, or starting a blog. Blogs seem to be less in the spotlight these days, but blogging or writing is a huge, very powerful medium still. So, blogging if you like writing, YouTube if you like being on camera, a podcast if you like audio format. So, pick one, just one. Just pick one and commit to the one. So, what's the medium that you want to play with? I just picked podcasting for whatever reason. I love being on camera and smiling and being a little bit of a ham. So I was like, why didn't I pick YouTubing? Doesn't matter. I picked podcasting, right? And the idea is to master that craft before we start doing the others. So inevitably, as a fledgling content creator, we look to the people who are super successful and they have a blog and they have a YouTube channel and they have a podcast and they're all over Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, right there everywhere. And it's like, that is too much. So pick your channel, okay? Commit to that channel. And then once we start creating that content, I picked podcasting. I do a podcast episode a week. I can repurpose that content now into social media content. So I'm differentiating for anybody watching, listening between long form content, YouTube, again, YouTube, blogging, podcasting, and then social media, which is the short form, goes away really quick. And there's benefits to both. But anyway, pick that long form, and then we can repurpose that content into social media content. And then I would encourage everybody to do the same thing, to pick your favorite social media platform and master it first. So right now, I love LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn for what I do. So many people on LinkedIn want to learn how to go guest speak on podcasts and grow their businesses by guest speaking on podcasts. So that's a natural place for me to play. Okay. And so it's the barriers to entry on starting a podcast or a YouTube channel or a blog are almost zero. And I'm just going to say that everybody listening goes, I want to start a podcast. Now, I tend to be 95% in on messy action and just start your podcast. Some people are going to be like, uh, record your first 10 episodes, create your intro, create your outro, get everything dialed in, and then launch your podcast. When we first start our podcasts, it's so hard to break through right away. Like, don't overthink it. So, anybody watching, listening right now, this is how easy it is to start a podcast. We've got our phones, right? So, they've got a more than sufficient microphone. And if you can film yourself at the same time. But the way I started, and I've got the little mic right up here. Here, I'll grab it real quick.
And for those people who might not see this but are listening, he got up and switched out, and now you have a small microphone.
A mic. Yep, that you can plug into your phone. Okay. So when I started my podcast, I would go walking. I love walking. So perhaps you drive to your kids to school every day on the way home. You could record something. When you're doing the dishes. I mean, whatever it is, like just get started. So I got a little microphone. This is the Shure MV88. It's awesome. You plug it in, I can speak, and the sound is more than sufficient. And how cool is this little microphone, Patty?
And again, for those who are not watching, and I'll put some links in the show notes. There are many different. It's a little microphone that clicks into the bottom of the phone. I have the DJI, which clips into the bottom of the phone, and then I wear the mic pack. And these things range in price from probably $100 on up to very expensive. And you don't necessarily need very expensive, just to be clear with people that just want to get started. Right now, I'm using, because I haven't found my headset, my storage unit, I'm using the cheap headset that plugs into my computer. And my editor is okay with it for now.
Yes.
I have to get a better one. But to your point, just get started. Don't let these things stop you. I use my phone for recording when I'm on the road. So I have my phone. I do have a gimbal that I attach it to. I have a mic set. But again, get started, start recording, let it be imperfect, and, improve as you go along, because that's the only way you're going to improve, and just reinforcing what you're saying.
Absolutely. And right now, everybody could go to Spotify. It's called, I can't remember what it's called, but you could Google start a podcast on Spotify. Spotify for podcasters, I literally think is what it's called, is going to pop up. We need to pick a platform. How it works is you pick a platform to put your podcast on, and then it pushes it out to all the podcast players. So I'm on Simplecast. I upload my podcast episode to Simplecast, and Simplecast pushes it out to Apple. This is way a lot of technobabble. Don't worry about
This
it, everybody.
right. Yeah, it's
Right?
step at a time. Like I'm on Buzzsprout. I use Buzzsprout
Exact
for whatever reason. That's
for whatever. Yeah.
right.
So Simplecast cost me $15 a month, I think, and it pushes it out to all the players. So Spotify is a player as well as a host. If I were to start a podcast today, this is exactly what I would do. I would go to Spotify for podcasters. I'd click start a podcast. When you do that, it's free, by the way. You click start a podcast. All you need to do is have a Spotify account, just like a regular listen to music Spotify account. It syncs it up with that. And then it literally says, what's the name of your podcast? Upload your first episode, hit start. It is that easy. Like
That's
you could start a podcast today on Spotify with about 10 clicks of a button.
and that's
Easy clicks of a
and
button.
that's great because I know for me, overwhelm is my go-to feeling. I'm going to say I quickly, easily get overwhelmed. As most people know, when I started the RV life over 3 years ago, my husband and I had a YouTube channel, and that was all set up by him. I don't do the technical stuff. I just know how to now upload a video. I know how to record a video. I don't do any editing. And so for me, all of that becomes overwhelming. And I'm saying this because I don't want people to get overwhelmed. When just short of 2 years ago, my podcast is almost 2 years old. My husband came to me and said, let's do a podcast. I was like, I can't handle one more thing on my plate. Just being honest, like, what are you talking about? We're going to do one more thing. And so then when Patrick from RV Life came along and said, hey, we think you guys would be great podcast hosts, I was like, all right, I'm outnumbered, and I went with it. My point in saying all this is a lot of the stuff that happens, I'm going to say behind the scenes, can be overwhelming. I love how you broke it down for people. Spotify sounds like a great way for people to get started. Little to no cost in the beginning. Now, I will say that I have made it even more streamlined and simple because I don't even want to do as much as you just said. And I have Jacob, my editor producer, who handles all of this. So I could go to him and say, hey, because I am starting a new YouTube channel. How do I start this channel? He might not know this yet, but he's going to be editing my videos. And I'm just at the point where I don't like that stuff. So I pay somebody else. And yes, I'm in the position to do that where I can pay somebody else to do it. But that's also the part of all of this, doing what you love. I want to focus on the interviews. I want to focus on being interviewed. I know I'm going to be interviewed on your podcast. And then other stuff can either be handled by somebody else eventually, or like you said, making it simple. I love what you said about using Spotify, nice and simple. And I'm going to reinforce people, just do it. Get it out there, make it messy. It's okay. There's no perfection in this. Just do it. Just get it done.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you the one commitment that I made when I started my podcast, and it has served me so, so well. And this is the commitment. And I can't remember where it came to me other than God was like, commit to this. And that is, I committed to putting out every episode that I've recorded. I was like, I'm not going to overthink it. I
Wow.
record it, I'm putting it out. I record it, I'm putting it out. I've done over 700 and some episodes. There's only one episode that I didn't put out. And I think I was having a really, really bad day and I was super emotional. And it was like, I was like, this is too over the top. I'm not going to do this one. In hindsight, I probably should have, but make that commitment. Anybody watching, listening, you're going to start your channel, record it, put it out there. From that, I also very quickly was like, don't overproduce it. Just clean up the intro and the outro, if that, and publish, 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 publish.
And I agree with that totally. And again, I say I have an editor and he he adds music to the intro, the outro. There's a long pause or there's extra noise. He will fix it. But when I get on, as I said to you, I've said to an RVer that I've interviewed, and I've said to presidents and CEOs of major companies, we are doing this podcast as if it's live and there is no editing. You make a
Mm.
mistake, you correct yourself. My voice doesn't sound perfect. It is what it is. And I hope people are, forgiving of that. If they're not, they may not be my audience. That's okay. So you have to develop a thick skin, that's for sure. But yeah, when I do my episodes, I always say there is as if they are live. There's no editing stuff out. So all of that stuff that, whatever's been said during this over an hour of this podcast will stay in. And I love that. And it's, I just want people to know it's not always easy to just do that. We are our worst critics, absolutely worst critics. And one of the things that worked well for me when I was starting is having a buddy that would push me. Somebody that was going to make sure I was going to get it done, push me when I was, feeling low and, just doubting myself. So I think that might be also a great thing for people to have.
Yeah, absolutely. An accountability buddy is a
Yeah,
great,
that's what
great.
I was looking for. The word I was
Yes,
looking for.
yes,
Yes.
yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think a few things. One thing I want to address, and then I have a couple of frameworks, mantras, acronyms that I live by that I would love to tell everybody because I think it would resonate with them and help them keep them motivated and make it through the hard spots, stuff that I use to help me get through that lumpy, hard stuff. Um, but with AI these days and everything being more and more easily shinied and glossied to perfection, that authenticity is becoming more and more powerful. The ugly pauses, the pauses that we think are ugly, no, those are powerful. Those are space for people to breathe it in, take in what we've said, internalize it. So much of the tools these days automatically take out the gaps and the pauses and the ums and the likes. It's taking out the humanness of it, I feel. I'm constantly looking at reviews of podcasts, things like that. And what I see oftentimes as podcasts mature and become popular is you'll see your podcast is now overproduced. I liked it when it was more real, authentic, raw, right? Like
Mhm.
overproduced. Anyway, those are things to think about. And I can't wait till I have this success where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've overproduced my podcast.
And authentic is the word that resonates with me. And, I'm going to put myself out there because there's also being vulnerable. The episode I was referring to, November 6th, the mom, anybody who's a parent, her talking about this situation with her 5-year-old who she tearfully talked about was dying in front of her eyes. And thankfully that worked well. Her vulnerability, her being authentic, her sharing that I know is inspiring to other people because that's real life. And when we overproduce and we over edit, we overthink, like honestly, I had some things that when I'm doing a podcast episode, I have my sponsors that I need to talk about. I have general idea of conversation. And literally I've been on the same page our entire time because I just want it to flow naturally and I really appreciate the information you're giving. And you had some more things, so please share.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So every morning I write down a few things when I start the day. And I'm a huge fan in journaling or inventorying. We spoke about this early, inventorying our lives, inventorying key aspects of our life and unplugging from everything and literally writing down what do I like? What do I love? What brings me joy? What don't I like? Take some time, slow down, think about it. I've done so much of that. I'm very clear on my why. I'm very clear on a lot of things. Some days it might not feel like it, but generally speaking, I'm very in tune with my purpose, my why, God, source, call it what you will. But anyway, so would encourage everybody to develop the practice of journaling, inventorying, other than I dislike this person or my mom's mean or stuff like that, right? Anyway, thank you for letting me go on that rant. But I literally write down four things in the morning, four or five things. One is smile and say hi. Moving from that space of being open, smiling and saying hi, and setting myself up to bring that energy to the day is so, so powerful. We lose track of how powerful a smile and positive energy can be to somebody and the ripple effect that that can have. I can get in the mindset of, I need to be this big influencer or have so many downloads or all this validation, when in reality, a smile and saying hi, it's just so powerful. So I remind myself of that in the morning. I have a little mantra, my life mantra, and I break it down like this: LIFE, life, live open. So we talked about that authenticity, live open. I had a girlfriend, her name was Kat. This was like that last failed relationship. And she would tell me, she'd go, Misha, it's like you have the secret life of Misha. And what she meant by that is I would think something through. And then I would come to her and go, I have the answer, and this is what we're going to do. And she would go, well, I didn't even know that you were trying to figure that out. Right. So it was always like the surprise. And I realized I need to be more open about my thoughts, my thought process, and be willing to be vulnerable in that arena. And then inspire transformation. And you talk to that so much, Patty. You're like, hey, I'm here to inspire everybody. I'm specifically here to inspire people to embrace this RV life because it's so powerful. And even more than that, I think you're like, do the thing that you know you're going to regret if you don't check that box. For you, it's the RV life and maybe some other things, but that is, it sounds to me like ultimately what you're trying to inspire people, like, man, check that box, right? So inspire transformation and then fearlessly serve the greater good. I love this idea of, I internally know I have my clock, I have that center of what is the greater good. And for a while in my life, I would make sacrifices around that greater good. And now I'm very committed to fearlessly serving the greater good. So I remind myself that. And then especially, E is especially. So live open, inspire transformation, fearlessly serve the greater good, and especially know I'm loved. I think as a content creator, we're putting ourselves out there. And a lot of days, there's no likes, there's no downloads, there's no follows, there's no external validation. The more I can know that God loves me, my higher power loves me, the universe loves me, like there's this big, broad love for me, the more I can hang out in that space, the easier it is for me to create that content or take go for the influencer lifestyle, if you want to say. Right.
Right.
Um, and then I've got CTA in marketing land. I'm all in marketing land all the time. We've got call to action, CDA, and I think CTA, and I think about God's call to action. So I like to be clean. I like to have clean thinking applied. CTA, clean thinking applied. So the more I can have my thoughts be clean, centered towards God. I could go on and on. I want to stop there because I know you're looking at the clock and I'm like, I want to be.
And I do want to circle back to, knowing you're loved, and internal validation is so, so important as a content creator. I've seen it and I just saw it today. So maybe it's a message. Somebody had this huge, I want to say, viral piece of content. And in that, there is the negative, the nasty, the comments. And I don't want to go down that negative rabbit hole. I just want people to know, as a content creator, you have to have that internal validation. You have to believe in what you're doing. You have, and I say have to, because you have to be strong in your belief system. There are people out there bashing people for homeschooling their kids, having them on the road, homeschooling them of all things. Again, don't want to go down that rabbit hole, just to make the point that we can either listen to our own internal. I feel like today I accomplished something. I'm proud of myself. I'm happy with what I've created, and listen to the people who are supporting that, and like Brittany, who reached out and said, "Wow, I'm inspired by your podcast. Thank you so much." That meant so much. Literally, I teared up. I'm going to be totally honest. I literally teared up at her messages. But you do need that internal, I believe in what I do, and I'm going to continue to do it no matter what anybody thinks. And you'll find your people that like what you're doing. So that was a big, that, all of your points are very, very helpful in the world of trying to become a content creator. But that's a big one for me.
Yeah. I am so happy when I get negative feedback on some of my content, because then I know that I'm growing an audience. That is
Right.
part of growing an audience. So I literally snap a shot. Every time I get something, I just got an email. I've got an email list because I'm building an email list. That's another thing we want to do as online business people, or becoming influencers or things like that. And so someone replied to one of my emails, and it was super, I don't know if I want to say dark, but it wasn't positive. And I was
Okay.
so excited. I was like, yes, I get, yes, my audience is getting bigger, because that's proof that I'm gaining ground. And the good news is, when we're big enough with our audiences and we're getting a lot of, perhaps, negative feedback, there's influencers out there that know how to leverage that into more looks, likes, follows, subscribers, things like that. So it's like, when we get enough of that, that's actually a good thing, because we can use it to our benefit.
Right. We could take it, and I read all of them. I used to take them in. It used to really hurt. I'd lose sleep over it. And then I got to the point where some of those comments just need to be deleted, forgotten about, move on. But there are some comments that maybe are constructive criticism. And I always want to read them and say, okay, is there some truth in this? And is there something I need to do to make to be better? Because I'm always looking to improve. And I welcome people, and I'm going to put that out there to my listeners, in wherever you're listening to the podcast, there's, a review. Please let me know what you think, good, bad, constructive criticism, people you want to hear on the podcast, people you don't want to hear. Like, I want to hear that, and I open myself up to that. They can also reach out on social media, RV Life Podcast, Instagram and Facebook. They're the only two I do. And while we're talking about that, where can people reach out to you? How can they get to you?
Yeah, if you one are listening and going, gosh, I've got stories to tell, I'd love to guest speak on podcast, you can go to guestingguide.com, guestingguide.com, and you can download my free guide on how to launch and execute a profitable podcast guest speaking tour. And I would encourage anybody who's listening and made it this far and going, yeah, I want to be a content creator. Heck, you don't even need to start a podcast. You can start by telling your story on other people's podcasts. How easy is
Great
that?
way.
And it's
That is a
so much,
great way to get practice being in front of the microphone, so to speak. Yes, I highly recommend it.
yeah, a ton of fun. So that guesting guide, you can download it for free, and there's templates in there, how to find podcasts, how to find their emails, email templates to get on other people's shows, stuff like that. But then you can always just find me on LinkedIn. Great place to find me. You can just go to LinkedIn and type in my name, Mischa. Last name is Zvagensov, but by the time you start spelling my last name, I should pop up. So
Right.
just
I will put
there
it
you
in
go.
the show notes for people who are driving or working out, whatever they're doing while listening to the podcast. I will have that in the show notes, and they can reach out to you. Um, I There's so much here, so much more we could cover. I want to go on a couple more things. Before the podcast started, my editor, Jacob, you and I were talking about this RV lifestyle. Neither of you are in the RV life, but I had taken Jacob to an RV show, actually, the Music City Motorhome Expo in Tennessee last June, and he has been thinking about RVing ever since. So maybe I'm affecting people. I know you said, hey, this might sound like a good idea. And I just want to talk a little bit about my friends at National Indoor RV Centers for those people who are thinking about going down the RV life road. NIRVC.com for short has Class A, B, and C. They have pre-owned and new units. And again, they have 6 locations. The most important part for me is the people. The people are authentic. They care about their end customer. Right now, some people are thinking about storing their RV, and NIRVC would be the place to do it. They have 5 locations across the country, and they have concierge service, which has a valet team that will do things like inflate your tires, check your batteries, check your refrigerator, your tanks. They wash and detail it. You can even leave your tow car with them, and they do all the routine maintenance and repairs while it is in storage. It is a great company, and they have an amazing service. Right now, though, is the question of the week, and this is going to be for you, Misha. It is brought to you by Open Roads Innovative Toll Solutions. This is a toll pass that for $24 a year covers all 48 states. So there's no more traveling across the country, being in a state where you're not sure if your transponder is going to work, and then you get that bill in the mail with fines and all this other stuff. The Open Roads Innovative Toll Solution has been an incredible solution for me over the last 10 months. It has worked amazing. And if you do run into any kind of problem, they have concierge service that will take care of it for you. So that is Open Roads Innovative Toll Solutions. You go to myopenroads.com, and there's a drop-down menu. Again, it'll all be in the show notes, so you could sign up for this incredible, you must have toll pass. Okay. Question for you, Misha. I know that you have done a lot of things. You've seen a lot of things. What I always ask my guest is, what is one thing that you have on your bucket list that you are looking to do? And there is a great pause because I know I'm putting you on the spot. So I have to fill in the time. We need music here, Jacob. We'll need some kind of music to give the guests, yes, exactly, to give the guests some time, because it's always something I spring on my guest.
Amazing. So generally speaking, as I said before, I am doing what I want to do. On my bucket list are to speak on big stages, to inspire from big stages. So I am working to do that, right? It's kind of out of my hands sometimes whether that will actually happen, but I'm trying to make it happen. Outside of that, I've always wanted to go heli skiing or heli snowboarding, either or both, maybe in like Japan or the Canadian Rockies or something like that. So having an adventure like that before I'm too old to ski in that kind of deep powder. So it'd be super fun to do that with my brother as well. Nick, if you're listening, that still is on my bucket list. So there you go.
There we go. And so when I have guests on, they're usually RVers, and they'll talk about a place they want to go to. And I highly recommend people have bucket lists for those places, those experiences, people you want to see. Having a bucket list for that, having a list, literally making a physical list. I'm all about it. I also love that you have this bucket list for what you want to do next, like what your next career thing is. I also have a bucket list, for I want to get back on big stages. I did that years ago, and that is something on my bucket list. And writing those down and sharing those things, putting it out there is, I think, a big deal. And as a content creator, starting to think about, those kinds of things on your bucket list. What do I want to do next? Where do I want to go in the world of, I'm going to say business for lack of a better word. So that's great. Thank you for that. It is now time for the campground of the week. And the featured campground is Pacific Dunes Ranch RV Resort in Oceano, California. This is 1,000 Trails Park, and it has 229 sites. This campground has full hookups, and they have very long, narrow sites, but the views that you see of the dunes sounds amazing. You can not only relax, but experience the dunes by dune buggy or horseback riding, or just take a nice stroll. Some of you, like you, have this adrenaline junkie adventure going snowboarding. I'm not quite as adventurous, although I've done the dune buggy thing and I loved it. Pacific Dunes Ranch RV Resort in Oceana, California has a solid 7.2 rating on the RV Life Campgrounds with 130 reviews. If you go to campgrounds.rvlife.com and you just type in Pacific Dune Ranch RV Resort, there is a great big red book now button, and that makes it easy for you to book your stay here. You could see all the photos of this place, the tips, full list of amenities about this property. They have tons of amenities here. The RV Life Campgrounds is part of RV Life Pro, and it's the most comprehensive source of RV parks, campgrounds, resorts, as well as city, state, and national parks, Corps of Engineers, and they have so much more. I do not do anything without my campgrounds.rvlife.com. And again, you could go to RV Life Pro, and there's a 25% discount code in the show notes. So, Misha, I just want to thank you so much for being on this show and giving such a wealth of information. I'm sure we will have you back on to give more information. I'm going to encourage my listeners to ask questions, either here on the podcast, on my social media, reach out to you as a community, asking questions and people helping to answer those is what it's all about. So thank you so much.
Indeed, this has been so much fun. Thank you for sharing your stage with me and just asking great questions and being such a gracious host.
You're welcome. You have been listening to the RV Life Podcast. I'm Patty Hunt, wishing you a great rest of today and an even better day tomorrow.